All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to talk about P6-Loader and how it can make using P6 easier and faster. My name's Ian Nicholson. I'm based in Calgary. I'm VP Solutions with Emerald Associates. I have over 25 years of international experience working in oil and gas, power, transportation, mining. Um, I do a lot of work with risk analysis and also a lot of work with P6 and helping clients get the most out of their P6 systems. Joining me today is Sue Familia. Sue's in our Wyoming office. Sue also has 25 years of project experience. She does a lot of work in turnarounds, capital programs, and a number of different industries. So let's talk a little bit about the struggles that people have with P6. Now we all know that P6 is a industry standard tool, and those of us who use it every day find it pretty easy to work with. But there's some things that drive us crazy. Well, it's even worse when you got people who don't really understand P6 all that well because there's quite a steep learning curve with P6. The first one is administering P6. Um, it's often very difficult to move user profiles from one user to another. There are some utilities in the newer versions of P6 to help with that, but if you want to create additional P6 databases, it can be quite difficult to do so. Particularly if you want to move EPS structures, OBS structures, user accounts, user profiles, all those kind of things. And we do have a number of clients who create a separate database for every client that they have. So they're engineering companies, for example. And every time they have a new client, they want to create a new database to make absolutely sure that clients' data stays private. So for them, every time they create this new database, they've got to go and manually recreate all the users, all the user profiles, all this kind of stuff. So it's much easier to use P6-Loader to move that information from one database to another. The next thing is developing projects. So oftentimes, you want to create a project or perhaps a portfolio of projects, and you want to create structure that you can use within those projects. So a good example would be one of our clients is a large oil and gas company. And when they kick off a major project, they may have hundreds or even thousands of work packages that they've got to get into P6. So those work packages could be um, engineering work packages, they could be construction work packages, um, they could be any number of different basically activity code dictionaries that need to be created so that all of the work in the project can be properly coded. Well, that can be, as I said, hundreds or thousands of activity codes that have to be created. And it's actually very difficult and very tedious to do that into P6. But using P6-Loader, you can create those dictionaries in a matter of a couple of minutes by just taking the list that you already have from your project plan, put it in Excel, and load it into P6. And the same thing holds true for your WBS, any of your other codes, your user-defined fields, anything like that that you need to load very quickly, you can do very quickly with P6-Loader. Now, the next one is data integration. Now, the reality is that no system exists in a vacuum anymore. So you've got your project control software, you've got your scheduling software, you've got your ERP system, and you need to get data from one to the other. Now, you can develop interfaces between those, but oftentimes what we hear is that people have developed an interface but doesn't quite do what they want. And that's a source of great frustration because, even with agile development methodologies, you start to develop something, it doesn't work, then you've got to change it and change it and change it. One of the really nice things about P6-Loader is you can trial all of your data flows using P6-Loader to make sure everything works the way you expect before you go out and do a lot of coding to actually formally create that process. And we have done that with a lot of clients where we've just used P6-Loader for a month or two just to make sure everything's working the way people expect before we actually sit down and write any code. Team engagement. Now, I've said before, those of us who work in P6 every day find it very easy. But the reality is there's a lot of people out there who don't use P6 every day, but they do use Excel every day. So one of the things that we can do is we can use P6-Loader to give those people the opportunity to input data into P6 in an easy way. So to give you an example, one of our clients uses P6 for their turnarounds. Um, and a turnaround is when you do a whole bunch of maintenance work on a plant that you can't do while the plant is running. Now, during the turnaround window, everything's done within P6 using our TAPS tool. But in the pre and post work, most of those people doing the work are not on site all the time. So what they do is they use P6-Loader to extract all the work for a particular company. They email it to them in an Excel format, get them to update their progress. They email it back, and it gets loaded back into P6. So essentially, rather than having people have to log into P6 to update their work, we can just use Excel as a sort of a mailbox to do that. Consistent portfolios. One of the things that we hear a lot from clients these days is that they want to get better use out of their P6 data. They've got a corporate business intelligence software that they want to use, and they want to get P6 information into that software. Well, the first hurdle that you have when you need to do that is that P6 needs to be properly coded so that uh, you can compare apples to apples across your projects or your portfolios of projects. So you need to create global codes. You need to create project codes. You maybe need to create user-defined fields at different levels, the WBS level, the project level, the EPS level. All those kind of things need to be done so that you can pull that data out in a way that's meaningful. That can be really difficult to backfill with P6 because once you've created a project that's been running for a while, now you've got to manually go and recode everything. Again, using P6-Loader, you can do that very quickly and very efficiently. So let's talk about how P6-Loader works. So first of all, P6-Loader can be on-premise, it can be in the cloud, or it can be some hybrid version in between. So if your P6 is in the cloud, but you want to have uh, Excel loaded on your local machine, you can have P6-Loader either in the cloud, or you can have P6-Loader locally communicating to your cloud P6. Everything can be on-premise, or everything can be in the cloud. So we make it very easy and very flexible to work with P6-Loader. Now, there's been other approaches that people have taken to try and get information in and out of P6. So let's talk about how those various things work. So let's go back maybe right to the earliest approach people would have would be that they would use an XCR and they would actually go and manipulate the data within an XCR. So an XCR is Primavera's native import export format. It's a flat text file, and you can go in any text editor and you can work with it. But there's some challenges there. The first one is that there's no validation of that data. So if you make a change in an XCR and you import it, P6 is going to import it to the tables regardless of whether it's valid or not. So to give you an example, we had an issue with a client who was getting a file from their engineering company. Now the engineering company had an activity code which was an EPS code, but the client had it as a global code. So someone had the idea, we'll open up the XCR and we'll just change the scope of that activity code. But they spelt the word global incorrectly. Someone just typed it wrong. So what happened was it got pulled into P6, but then every time anybody tried to log into P6, it would read those dictionaries. It would come across this value that it didn't know what to do with, and it would immediately crash. And so anybody who was in P6 could stay in P6, but anybody who tried to log in would immediately get a crash. And it took us quite a while to figure out what had happened. And essentially that manipulated XCR had crashed the entire system. Now, Oracle will not support you if you screw up your database doing this. So you're going to need someone like us to go through and pour through the tables to try and understand where the problem is. Um, the other thing about it is um, you can't selectively extract data to an XCR. You take a whole project or nothing. You also can't access global data. There's no security around XCRs. And as I mentioned before, if there's no data validation, so if you mess it up, you're on your own. So the next step that people do is they use the XML import. Now there is data validation on the XML import, but XML files are not that easy for the average person to work with. And they only do one project at a time. So you can pull a project out, you can make some changes, but uh, you can only do one project at a time. You can't do anything with global data as well. And the XML import export, again, does not have any security around it. Um, Primavera also has the SDK, but the SDK is no longer supported. It works in some cases and doesn't work in others. It's kind of slowly falling off. It does let you use or access global data, which is good. It does validate the data, which is also good. It allows selective extraction. It allows multiple projects. So it sounds like it's got everything you need, except that you have to be a super user to use it, which means that you have all the access. So you can't just give it to anybody because they can do all kinds of damage. So, one of the big frustrations people have is that in order to be able to use the SDK, you need to be a P6 admin super user. Finally, there's a P6 Excel import and export, which again has data validation. It is supported by Oracle. It does selective extraction, but again, it's only single project and you can't access any global data with it. So P6-Loader addresses all of these things. So P6-Loader allows you to access any data in P6. It follows the P6 security model. So if a user only has access to certain things, then that's all they can extract and load using P6-Loader. We basically build it on top of the P6 security model that's already there. Data is validated by either the web services or the APIs. It's supported by Oracle because you're using web services or APIs. You can selectively extract, and you can extract or load as many projects as you like, including baselines, by the way. So we have subject areas in P6-Loader. We have the global subject area, which would be your EPS, your user accounts, your security profiles, all that kind of stuff. We have resources and roles. We have project and activity information. And then we also have a number of utilities that P6-Loader offers to help you manage your P6 system. So there's a whole bunch of different things that P6-Loader will access. Um, Essentially, it'll access anything that the user can access can also be accessed through P6-Loader because Oracle has made the web services pretty much available on every part of P6. But we have also added, I mentioned before, some utilities. So we allow you to roll down activity codes. So that means if I've got a global activity code that I want to make into, say, a project activity code, I can do so and it will do that for me. I can also roll down calendars. So if I have a global calendar that I want to make into a project calendar, I can do that as well. I can also read and write both XCR files and XML files. Um, I can clean my XCR file, so I can read in an XCR, clean out things like risk types or POBS records, which can cause trouble. I can run job services. So what I can do is I can load a bunch of data in, and when I'm done, I can tell the P6 to reschedule all the projects that I loaded data into. Um, I can also move layouts and reports from one database to another. So in the example I gave before, where you're creating multiple databases for different clients, not only can you move the users, but you can move all your standard layouts and all your standard reports, and the system's smart enough to remap them for you. So if an activity code number changes in the background, it will fix that for you automatically, which doesn't happen with the built-in import export of layouts and reports in P6. And just added recently, we also have the ability to back up your data. So if you're working with P6 and you're either in a situation where you don't have database backups, or you're not confident that your IT department would even know what to do with a database backup, you can actually use P6-Loader to export your projects, export anything out of your system so that if something gets corrupted or screwed up or someone deletes something by mistake, you've got all those backups so you can restore all of that data. So what do we do? So the first thing we typically do is we'll extract the data that we want to look at. So we can extract global data, user data, project data. We can extract, when we get to project data, we can extract one project or many projects. We can extract just a project, or we can extract just the baselines of a project. We can extract the resources and expenses of that project. And then once you've got it into Excel, you can manipulate the data any way you want using Excel functions like macros or forms. You can pull data from other systems, and then you load it back into P6 and you're good to go. So I'm going to stop talking now and let Sue actually show you what the software looks like. So let me just transfer control to Sue.
Thank you, Ian. I'm going to share my screen here so you can actually see the tool in live time. Okay, so with P6-Loader, just like we have different environments, or we can have different environments or schemas in P6, we can also hook P6-Loader up to several different ones. So it's just like P6, you would select the database that you want to use, and then you would sign in. And it's going to take, based on that sign in or that user, the uh, the responsibilities that they are able to access from P6 itself. So the first example I want to show you is if you're in the need to spin up a new database, let's say for a new client, and you already have information that you want to use, or an EPS or an OBS structure that you want to use in that empty database, you could pull it out from one database and actually just load it into the other database. So I'm in the web version here, and I have my OBS structure that is not currently set up because this is a brand new database. And I also want to set up an EPS structure so that I can start working with this database and putting in my projects and organizing it. I could do the same thing with my users as well, but I'm just going to do the OBS and the EPS right now. So I'm going to use another database that I already have set up, and I'm going to extract the EPS and the OBS elements from that database using P6-Loader. So when I go into P6-Loader, I'm going to go to this extract area here. And when I use that extract, I can see everything that I can access in the data that I can access in P6-Loader. So, for example, we have the user information. We can work with the security profiles, the users themselves. We can assign their OBS elements to the users, and we can also set up their resource access. For global information, of course, we have the OBS and the EPS that I'm going to bring out. So I'm going to check mark those. And I also have all of these other global pieces of information, including, project codes, activity codes, UDFs, calendars. So quite a large example or smattering of elements at the global level. We've also got roles and resources that we can access. If you use risk information, we have that information available. We also have project information, which is going to be the project itself, any kind of WBS, baselines, things like that. And then we have our activity information that we can deal with. So we've got, our activities, our resource assignments, our expenses, steps, notes. So we can access all of those. Now, in the case that I am using this project information, I want to specify what project or projects I want to actually access. So that's over here on the right hand side. In the right hand side, we can drill down essentially through our EPS structure. And I'm going to just grab my loader one. And I'm working today in this demo EPS. And so once I get to that demo EPS, I can see the 4 projects that reside there. Now I could select the entire EPS, or perhaps maybe I just want to bring out a couple of those, or again, just one if need be. So I'm able to do that and choose the project or projects that I want to work with the data in. Now, the last thing that Ian had that I want to look at is Ian had uh, said that we have some of those. Oh, I'm having a I'm losing my brain. But we have some of these pieces that are going to help you in working with some of the information. Utilities, there we go. I have utilities that are here. So I can find out where UDFs, activity codes, global calendars, resources, roles, etc., where they are used, how many times they're used in a project, and I can help analyze this data. So perhaps there's a time when I actually want to start cleaning up my database, and it's been out there for a while, and I want to see what is actually being used in my current database. I can use these utilities to help me out. And I am going to go over the roll down process in just a few minutes. So back to the task at hand. We're going to bring out the OBS and the EPS from the database that I showed you. So I've marked those, and I'm just going to ask P6-Loader to extract that information for me. Once it's extracted, I can download that file, and that file is going to open up as an Excel file. And it looks like I'm having trouble here. Oh, there it goes. It just was a little delayed. So you can see that I have a tab for OBS and EPS. So for each module that you select, you will get a tab with the information within that module. Now, just a few words about these different colors across the top here. Um, the bright red backgrounds are indicating that this is a required piece of information for you to use the OBS um, module in P6. So at the very least, I need to have a name for my OBS that's there, and I could create it at that time, or I could use my if I did pull it out, I can use my new name feature, and I could rename that OBS in this case. So that's what the orange font indicates is a remapping or a renaming column. Now, the gray here is just informational. So I can remove this out if I want to. I can move any of these columns around so that I can concentrate on what I actually want to deal with in P6 in that data. And the blue ones are actually places where I can change information in P6 itself. So if I wanted to go in and change a parent OBS ID and make a different hierarchy, put it in a different place, I could change it here, load it, and it's going to reflect that change. Now, if I don't, again, need these blue or gray columns, I can simply just delete them out. So let's say I'm not um, working with my description, I can delete it out, and it's not P6-Loader still knows how to load all of that in. What P6-Loader keys on is the name of the actual column itself. So it's the column name that it keys into. Just going to take a look at the EPS really quickly. Now, in this one, we do have some additional pieces of required information. So we need an ID, a name, and an OBS ID to work with our EPS. Now, if I, again, didn't have any reason to remap or rename anything, I can also remove this column as well. So I'm going to clean this up, and I'm going to load it into my new database. And I've already done that, so you don't have to watch me go through that exercise. And if you'll notice, the first thing I did is I added a column here called cleanup. And this is the original name that I pulled out for my OBS. However, I wanted to clean it up, and I wanted to actually load in all caps when I did that. So I've cleaned up my all caps, and I've put the column header set to name, and so it's going to load in this name. Now, P6-Loader doesn't recognize what cleanup is, so it's just going to skip right over it when it goes to create this EP or OBS structure. Now on the EPS, I've started to clean up my EPS, and I've found that I need sandbox and training, which I added to both my EPS and my OBS here. And because they weren't in there to begin with. So I do want to add those to my new database. And I have some other stuff that I really just want to kind of think about and kind of manipulate maybe a little bit further. So I'm just going to load this top section. And if I leave a blank line between what I want to load and what I don't want to load below it, P6-Loader is going to stop at that blank line and only load what is above it. So let's go ahead and load this in. So first of all, I have to be sure that I'm loading it into the correct database. So I'm going to go ahead and log out, and I'm going to select the database that I want. And because this is new, just set up, I'm going to use the admin password for this. And I'm going to upload that file. So I'm going to use this upload area now. I can browse to where my file is, and I can select it and then upload this information into my new um, database here. It'll tell me when it's completed, and then I can go over into P6 and I can refresh my data. And I'm going to see that I now have my structure that is here that I wanted to add. Let me expand that. And I also have those OBS or responsible manager elements that are also assigned and created for this particular database. So now I'm ready to go in and start working in this database, either setting up users or start working with projects or whatever. So one nice way to use that global information using P6-Loader with setting up a new database or even creating new elements in your database. So the next thing I'm going to show you is a roll down. I have some activity codes in this project here that are obviously kind of a mess. I've got, of course, some duplicates here. I've got an equipment A and equipment B, and one is at the global and one is at the EPS, but it contains the same information. I actually want to keep this information, but I want to combine these two and I want to put this code at the EPS level because my equipment code is important only to the EPS that this project is in. I also have my phase code, which is at the global level right now, but again, it's only important to the EPS that my project is in. So I want to push that down to the EPS level. On my specs, they're both at the global level. I still need to keep all these assignments here. However, the specs are only for the project. So I'm going to push this, I'm going to combine these and I'm going to push them down to the project level. And my work order is also at the global level. And I want to push that down to the project level because again, it's only pertinent to this project. So what I'm going to show you now is our code roll down utility. So I can take the original name and scope of my code. I can tell it I want to roll it down. In this case, I'm just doing the phase and I'm going to roll it down. I'm going to give it a new name, or I can use the same name. If I don't put any name in there like I did with the work order here, it's just going to name it what it was named in the original. And then because this is an EPS, code. I'm going to push it to the EPS level. I'm going to tell it which EPS I want it to belong to. Now on my equipment codes, remember I had two that were duplicates. Now what I can do with that is I can say what the original was, that I want to push it down to the EPS level. And in this case, I'm going to name it the same thing, which is going to take those two separate codes and merge them into one and merge their dictionaries as well, and then reassign them in the project. And again, I have to put my EPS ID in there. Now for my specs, again, I'm going to combine those into one. I'm going to put that at the project level, and I'm going to give it the project name that I want it to be associated with. And then with my work order, I'm going to push it down to the project level. I'm going to keep this name that it was originally named, and I'm going to give it the project ID I want it associated with. Now, this last column here, this is indicating to P6-Loader what I want to do with that original code. So in the case of these top 5 here, I'm going to keep those. I want to make sure that I've taken care of all these codes in all the projects where they're um, assigned to before I actually delete them. So I might want to use a usage sheet and find if I've cleared up all of these and they are actually reassigned. But in the case of the work order, I know for sure that one is not assigned anywhere else, and I'm going to actually delete it at the global level and just maintain it at the project level. So I just need to load this sheet. And again, I want to go into the database that I'm actually working with, which is my Demo 2020 database. And I'm going to log in. I'm going to browse to that folder and get that file and have P6-Loader upload it. So it's going in and it's changing, pushing down all of those codes, combining them and reassigning them in the project. And once it's complete, I can go back to P6 and refresh my data. And of course, I don't have those there anymore because they're not assigned. So I'm going to need to go in and add some columns. So at my EPS level, here's my phase and my equipment code that was combined and pushed down. And then at the project level, I have my specs and here's my work order again. So I can go ahead and show those. Now, here's my phase. I can see on my equipment that it has combined those two and it reassigned them based on the dictionary values that were assigned prior. The same goes with my specs and my work order. So I was able to clean up really well my activity or my codes, activity codes in this case. Um, I was able to clean these up and get them put at the right level where I actually needed them in my database. Now, my next one I want to show you is creating just a brand new project. So I'm going to open up this new project here, and I'm going to it's empty, so I'm just going to change this layout really quickly so that we can see a little bit more of the information that's going to come in. And also, I want to uh, get my I want to create some resources for this project as well. And so I'm going to put those resources in this parent called P6-Loader. So this next one has a lot of different sheets in it because I'm doing a new project in one fell swoop. You don't have to do all these modules at once in order to create a project. You can piecemeal it. So if all I have is my WBS, I can certainly just run my WBS in. But I'm going to go over a lot of sheets. So in the case of my WBS, I'm starting to build it out. I've got some hierarchy built in, and I'm getting ready to be able to put activities in there. So this is going to build my OBS, or excuse me, my WBS. Now I have some activity codes that I need to have um, a some activity codes that are specific to this project. So I'm setting them up at the project level, giving them a name, and telling it what project I want it associated with. I've also got my activity code dictionaries. So in this next one, I'm setting up those dictionaries. So I've got my discipline and the dictionary values that go along in that activity code. I've got my area and my work packages. Now the next one is how we would set up our activities. So I have to give it my project ID, I have to give it an activity ID, and then I can fill in things like what WBS it should be in, the name. Um, I'm assigning some those codes there, and I'm also using the functionality in Excel to help me build out some of my names for my activities. So I have an extra column in here that I've put title on. P6-Loader doesn't know what title means, so it's just going to skip over it. And then I'm using my area and my work package project codes to build out my activity name. So I've used that concatenate functionality in Excel to build my name out for me. Now I don't have to copy and paste these values. P6-Loader will actually load the result of this particular formula here. I can start building out my activity expenses, and perhaps I need some account codes, because some cost account codes to go along with that. So in my case, I need to build those out. So I can build out those cost accounts, put some hierarchy on them, and have my cost accounts ready to go as well. Now on my steps, I can build those out. And what I can do here is, let's say I have steps that are common throughout several different activities. I can use, of course, the functionality in P6 to um, copy and paste those and then put my next activity ID or whatever to actually get those loaded in. So I won't have to type or copy and paste all that stuff individually. I could do it just simply using the functionality of Excel. Now we can also deal with calendars. In the case of this project, I need to create a new resource calendar. And this calendar is actually kind of a complicated calendar to set up. It's a rotating calendar. So there's going to be 10 days off or 10 days on and 4 days off. So I can set up that calendar. I can mark the days of the week and the hours during the day that are going to be work hours. And then I can do my exceptions a lot easier in Excel than I can by counting in P6 to decide which are exceptions. So I've put in my first date, and then I've used a formula to fill down my next 4. Then I'm going to jump to my 11th day and then fill down from there. So this is a lot easier using the functionality, and the accuracy is going to be so much better by using formulas rather than counting in P6 each one of those boxes and highlighting them and hoping I don't click something that is off. So really easy to set up your more complicated calendars in P6-Loader. Now, I also need to create a new resource code. So I'm going to use my contractor, and I'm going to populate that contractor dictionary. And I'm also building in some hierarchy for that dictionary. So we can do that hierarchy as well. Now, for my resources, I need this set of resources to have for my project. I need these for my project. So I've given them an ID, a name. I've created some hierarchy in here. I've also assigned that new calendar that I've created, and as well as the contractor code that I want to assign there. And the great thing about P6-Loader is it knows what order, no matter what order they are down here in the bottom or whatever, it knows the order in which to load each piece of data so that it can accomplish assigning it later on when it's appropriate. So it will create the calendar and then it will assign it. It will create the code and then assign it. Then I want to assign, of course, my resources to my activities. I can put in resources or roles. I can put cost accounts in there. I can start some planning, so I can do my duration. I can plan my units. I can plan my costs and get those actually loaded in with P6-Loader. Of course, our uh, project wouldn't be a project if we didn't have some relationships set up between our activities. So we've got this the relationship tab, and that is going to ask you to put in the project ID, the activity ID for the predecessor, and what the successor is to that activity. So we can also handle cross project relationships. So you can put in the project ID and the activity ID, and then put in the cross project ID as well as that activity. You can set your type for your activity or your relationship, and you can also designate lag for those relationships. And then finally, we can also work with our resource rates. So I've got two different shifts for my commissioning crew. And so I have the 7 a.m. and the 7 p.m. shift. So again, I could use that functionality in P6. Maybe I want to just work with the 7 a.m. shift, and it's not giving me this. Let me try again. There we go. So I could filter this on just my 7 a.m. shift, and I could perhaps, in this case, looks like I could fill these all down for my 7 a.m. shift. So it's going to help me out in defining each one of these and getting my rates and my maximum units per time in for each one of the shifts. So let's go ahead and load up our new project. So I'm going to go upload, select my new project file, and bring that, load that in. P6-Loader is going to kind of give you what's going on with it, what it's loading at the time as you're waiting for it to come in. If I wanted to go and work with something else, I could certainly do that and come back. But this one's fairly small, so it's not going to take much time to get those loaded in. Now I can go back to P6 and refresh. So on my P6-Loader um, tree, I now have my new resources. I've got that calendar in there. I've got, well, my code should be in there and it's not, but hopefully you'll trust me. Let's see, do I have codes here? Yes, there we go. Here's a code. So here is my contractor code, my location, etc. on these. Now in my activities, I can now see that I've got calendars assigned, I've got original duration, I've got my steps in here, uh, my logic, my resources roles, my cost accounts, and here's my planning that I started in this. So very easy to set up all kinds of elements for your projects. Now, Ian referred to working with baselines. Now, we can work with baselines without having to detach them or using the tool that is actually in P6 itself. I find the tool in P6 to edit your baselines can be a little bit cumbersome, and so this is just a great way to take a look at this. So I've got my baselines here, and I am going to move some costs around and some units. And I did happen to have some found work that was also done. So I pulled out the baseline and the project. I don't need any of the project information, so I've deleted it out. But I am going to add into my project the found work, as well as I'm going to add it into my baseline itself. Now, what you see below here is all the baseline activities that were pulled out, but I only need to work with a couple of them. So what I've done is I have pulled out what was in already, and I've renamed that to my original. Now I'm going to use my an additional column here to do my debits and credits, and then I'm going to use my functionality of my sum to make sure that my numbers are correct. So I'm going to let Excel do my work for me. Now, I don't have to load all these all at once, or all of these, because I'm really only touching on 6 items here. So what I could do is I could delete out all these other lines that are not going to be loaded in. And I'm just going to filter them for now, just so that you could see the the difference. So now I've only got 6 lines that I need to load in. So I'm going to go ahead and load in the changes to my baseline. And again, this doesn't take very long to run these. So I'm going to go and refresh my data. And I've got now my data is all aligned. So I've got my added work here, and it was added to both my baseline and my project. And I've got my scope that indicates that it was added. And I've also got my debits and my credits, and this does this every time. There we go. I've got my debits and my credits for my 2 activities. And this is the difference, so that my baseline did change, and then my debits and credits on my other one, so that those are now changed as well. So really easy to update those baselines and without having to detach to make the changes and then reattach your baselines. Um, so my last example is going to be updating. So I have 2 projects that I am getting ready to update. I'm going to receive my first update on them, and I'm receiving these updates from my field people who don't use P6. So what I can do is I can create a layout for those in P6-Loader and pull out the information how I would like it to be pulled out. So if I go to my extract and um, I want to, and it's one that I'm going to use over and over again. It's something that it's going to be an extraction that I'm going to use over and over again. I have the ability to save my definitions. So down here in the corner, I have my save and load definitions, and I'm going to actually um, load this definition that I've saved. And this is going to actually just bring out the information on my project that I need, as well for each one of my uh, for my projects. Now, with these, the ones that have, and I didn't show that very well, the ones that have the little crayon next to it, I actually can decide, I can customize those columns. So if I wanted to go out and let's say I don't want all of these things, I want to actually just keep just a smattering of them. And I'm not going to move all of them over, but I can pick and choose. So if I only wanted to bring out this information on my sheet, and I don't want and say I don't want any of my UDFs because that's not important to my updating. I can go and use my can go and move those all over. So those aren't going to come out on my sheets. I can also do that with my codes. So once I have that and I save it, it's going to then pull that out, that information out exactly how I've defined it every time. So I've already done that on a sheet, and this is what essentially came out. On my project, I brought out just my data date and my project so that I can change my data date when I load this file again. Now, what I'm going to send out to my users who don't use P6 is I'm going to give them my project ID as well as my activity ID. I'm going to include the name, the status column, the percent complete column, and my actual dates as well as my plan dates. And I'm going to include my suspend and resume dates in case they need those as well. Now, this one is one that has come back to me. They've already filled it out. They've already put their progress on it. So I can see that my start milestones were completed. In the case of activity in each one of my projects, I have some percent completes that are in progress. And by supplying the planned start date, that's going to be easy for my users to actually just copy and paste that into my actual start. If they needed to edit it in any case, they could just go in and edit it as well. So then I'm actually ready to get those loaded in. So I'm going to load in my progress that was given back to me by going to my upload, and I'm going to load those in and update my progress on my project, or my projects in this case, because I'm using two projects. Now, when I click refresh, or I do a refresh, I'm going to see that my progress has come in. I've got my completed start milestones here on my financial period spread, which I did not show you in the sheet, but I will go back and do that. I actually had some different time periods that I wanted to load data into. So in the case of my earthworks here, I have put data into May of 2021, and I've also put data into June of 2021. Now, on my other one, I only needed to put units in for my um, June of 2021 on all of those. So let me pop back really quick and show you that. I totally just blew by that, so I apologize. So this is where I would put my actuals in, and I don't just have to use units. I can use my costs or whatever to update. But in my case, I just wanted to update the units. So I'm updating for each time period and for each resource the units on those. So before I go, um, I just want to make sure I don't have any questions. Okay. That looks like we were having some connectivity issues. All right. So if there are any questions, be sure to put them in the chat, and I can, or Ian or I can answer those um, as we go along. But for now, this is everything I have to show you in the live version. And so I'm going to stop my screen share, and I'll pass it back over to Ian to wrap everything up.
Thanks, Sue. All right. So just a quick wrap up. As Sue mentioned, if you have any questions, there is a question section on there, or you can put them in the chat and we'll get them answered. So to wrap things up, we like to get feedback from our customers, and we get some great feedback from some of them. One of the things I really like is one on the bottom there that says, "We finally got Loader, and I love it. Wish we did this 2 years ago." This is from a client that took about 2 years to decide to get it. So, people generally find that they're always finding new uses for P6-Loader, and it's making their lives a whole lot easier. Um, One of the other things is, as we talked about, one of the biggest frustrations with P6 is, in fact, loading bulk information like work orders or whatever kind of work packages or anything like that. Any of that data that you need to get into the activity codes. P6-Loader is great for that, and a lot of people, buy P6-Loader just for that reason. And then, of course, they find other uses for it. So we got clients all over the world using P6-Loader. Chemical companies, construction companies, utilities, shipyards, all kinds of different people are using this tool all over the world. And Emerald Associates can help you get going with P6-Loader or with P6 in any way. We're a Primavera one-stop shop. We do the tools, we do the services, and we also do the training. And as I mentioned, we're everything Primavera. We also deal with Safran risk. A little bit of information about us. We have a number of add-ons. This is one of them. If you go on our website, you can see some of the other ones, all about making P6 easier to work with. All right, so let's open it up for questions. So I think, so it says, will things work on I assume that means local installed P6 version? The only limitation we have on working with P6 is that if you're using the SQLite version of P6, it will not work because Oracle does not provide the APIs or the web services for the SQLite version. However, you can install the Oracle XE version on a local install and it will work with that. And there's no cost for Oracle XE with P6. Um, so yes, so the next question is, do we work with P6 Professional and P6 EPPM? Yes, we do. So we work with both. The difference is that if you are running entirely P6 Professional, you may need to purchase P6 Web Service licenses, which are included with EPPM, but not included with PPM or Professional out of the box. So if you have questions around whether you have those web service licenses or not, reach out to us and we'd be happy to get that answered for you. As far as P6 versions, we support all versions from 6.2.1 up. So there's still occasionally people out there running 6.2.1, but that's pretty rare. Most people are like in version 15 or above, and we have full support of those versions. Next question is, I've got a bunch of different programs in my EPS and I need to add logic that connects activities across those programs. Um, uh, uh, yeah, so P6-Loader will do that for you. You can create cross-project links, and that is in fact um, a standard use case for P6-Loader. We actually have clients who import updated schedules from their contractors every month and then need to link them up to their master project. And so what they do is they use P6-Loader to extract the logic. They remove the previous upgrade or update from the contractor, import the new one, and recreate the links. If you have a need over and above that, feel free to reach out to Sue and we can talk a little more about what we can do there. Does it integrate as a bridge between MS Project and P6? So yes, so we do have the ability now to read MS Project files, so we can do that as well. We so we do have that capability also. However, in most cases, what people would do is use the XML import into P6 and then clean up whatever they need to using Loader. But we do have that capability as
We
well.
do have a P6 scrubber tool that will clean up MS projects as well, but it is a
Yeah,
different
so
tool.
that's the other thing. If you're doing a lot of imports and you just want to change data around during the import process, P6 Scrubber is a good way to do that as well. And um, you know, the idea there is it basically does remaps as you go. So if you're getting the same files every time from a contractor or subcontractor or whatever they are, you can make a mapping that will automatically change that import as it comes
I do
across.
believe we have some P6 scrubber webinars coming up as well. So if you want to check our website for those, that might be something useful for you to attend as well.
Yeah, it looks like there's one on August the 23rd. I'm seeing in my calendar. So, um, okay, so let me just make sure we don't have any other questions we haven't answered. Um, yeah, I think we've answered everything. Um, so if you do have any additional questions, and we're just about out of time anyway, if you do have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. Sue's contact information is here on the slide. There is information on our website as well that you can take a look at, and our contact phone numbers are there also. So feel free to reach out to us with any other questions you might have. Okay, and with that, there's no more questions have appeared. So thanks everyone for joining us. And as I said, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And I hope you
Thanks
have
for
a great
attending.
day.